Recently, China's largest property developer, Country Garden, is facing a crisis and causing a market panic. Rumors have surfaced that the chairwoman, Yang Huiyan, is considering fleeing the country. Yang's grand residence in Cyprus, as well as her Cypriot citizenship, have also been exposed online.
This residence is located near a renowned golf course project in Cyprus. This is the luxurious home of Ms. Yang, the owner of Country Garden, who has often been the hot topic of debt issues in China recently. The Yang family had already prepared for such a scenario long before it occurred. The assets they've moved overseas are enough to sustain their families' luxurious lifestyle for generations. The property where she resides with its golf course is only a small section of the opulent life that many ordinary people dream of and wish to have.
China's economy is crumbling at an astonishing speed. This ranges from Country Garden's default, where they failed to pay interest on 2 due bonds totaling $22.5 million, to shadow bank Zhongrong International Trust missed payments. Then there is also Evergrande's bankruptcy application in the US, and also SOHO China announcing 93% year-on-year profit drop in the first half of the year. China's real estate crisis quickly rippled into other economic sectors, leading Wall Street to become bearish on China. The current state of China's economy can be summarized in a few sentences. Watch him build tall buildings, watch him host parties, watch his buildings collapse. China's current economic downturn has shocked many citizens, especially those who had grown accustomed to continuous economic growth and a consistently improving standard of living. Now they face challenges of business downturns and personal wealth shrinkage. Relying on Chinese government data to gauge the economy has become increasingly difficult. Some statistics, regularly published for years, including record-high youth unemployment rates, have ceased to be released. The available data paints a bleak picture. Consequently, the confidence of the Chinese people in the economy and the country's future is at an all-time low. This is leading to heightened anxiety throughout Chinese society.
Presently, office rents in Shanghai's Lujiazui have plummeted to 4 yuan per square meter per day. Vacancy rates in the entire Lujiazui area have exceeded 40%. The number of people and companies has decreased. Parking has become more abundant, and subways have become emptier. This is not a good sign. Street shops and restaurants are constantly opening and closing. Shouldn't the food be supposedly cheaper when no one's making money? However, that's not the case. Spending less than 35 yuan for lunch will hardly get you anything edible. This is the current state of Lujiazui. Despite the poor economic environment, prices are skyrocketing, making life difficult for both the young and middle-aged. Unexpectedly, those suffering the most this year aren't the jobless university students, nor the laid-off white-collar workers, nor the idle laborers. It's rather the small to medium enterprise owners who run their own businesses and take on minor projects. More and more owners can't even afford to pay salaries. Previously, they could rely on loans to stay afloat. But now, with old loans nearing maturity and no new loans coming in, many face the inevitable fate of closing down and laying off employees. Recent interactions with some business owners revealed that they've never experienced such a challenging era. Even during the 3 years of the pandemic from 2019 to 2022, things weren't this hard.
Give up. It's too exhausting. In my 13 years of running a supermarket, I thought I could endure through 3 years of the pandemic. Could this year be our end? They say every industry should be somewhat better now compared to the pandemic years. But this August, are you making a profit or suffering a loss? I always think others' businesses must be doing slightly better than mine. I constantly question whether my supermarket has appropriate pricing or decent service. But every customer is greeted with a warm smile, whether they make a purchase or not. These past few months have been extremely stressful. My hair has turned white so quickly. Wasn't this year supposed to see revenge spending? Why aren't people spending? Given the current situation, forget about profits. Breaking even would be good enough.
China has entered a difficult era. The public is in despair because it cannot imagine how it will escape from the vicious cycle. They believe that the root of the problem is the ideological stance of China's leader, Xi Jinping. Since Xi took power, there's been a significant political regression. The 2018 Chinese Constitution Amendment paved the way for unlimited terms in office. His rigorous policies over 3 years dealt significant blows to the Chinese economy. Ambitious initiatives he championed are in disarray, such as the Wolf Warrior diplomacy, One Belt, One Road, and Xiong'an New Area project, which was meant to serve as a development hub for the Beijing-Tianjin-Hebei economic triangle. A decade into his leadership, critiques describe Xi's governance style with phrases like, quote, high aspirations but insufficient talent, and unfit for his position. Online, he is humorously dubbed as the accelerator-in-chief, indicating that his policies accelerate the process of either bringing China into strong rivalry with superpowers or the collapse of the Chinese Communist Party. Xi seems to have a particular disdain for private enterprises. During the pandemic, when China's economy was most vulnerable, Xi pushed for the grand objective of common prosperity. The Chinese Communist Party began to exert more control, expecting these enterprises to shoulder greater societal responsibilities. Corporate profits were channeled toward government-backed social causes. Concurrently, new antitrust guidelines targeting technology companies were issued, with major firms facing substantial fines. Alibaba, for instance, was slapped with a record-breaking fine of over 20 billion yuan in April 2021. A widely circulated article on the website China Entrepreneur once said, Chinese entrepreneurs are either in prison or on their way there. Though possibly exaggerated, this sentiment reflects the complex environment that entrepreneurs face. Why does Beijing seem to fear the growth of the private economy? Chen Gangshu, a scholar at the Stanford Center on China's Economy and Institutions, suggested to Reuters that the Chinese Communist Party has a deep-seated fear. If capitalism and private enterprise become too strong, the party might be overthrown. Today, China faces multifaceted challenges. Local governments are burdened with debt, the yuan continues to devalue, there's a significant capital outflow. Aggressive foreign policies have widened rifts with Western countries like the US, leading to decreased foreign direct investment. China's massive investment in factories, skyscrapers, and infrastructure over the past 40 years, which once fueled its rapid economic growth, no longer seem effective. All economic stimulus measures appear to be failing, with the GDP growth expected to slow down continuously. The Chinese government has set a 5% economic growth target for 2023. This is lower than the usual annual target. However, many economists believe the Chinese government won't meet this target. JP Morgan has already lowered China's GDP growth projection to 4.8%, while Barclays reduced their forecast to 4.5%. The IMF predicts China's GDP growth rate will dip below 4% in the coming years, less than half of the average growth rate over the past 40 years. London-based research firm Capital Economics estimates China's economic growth has slowed from 5% in 2019 to 3% and may drop to around 2% by 2030. Many believe the lack of market and capital confidence stems from a distrust in Xi Jinping's policies and direction. Given the current political landscape in China, resolving the issue of Xi's centralized power seems unlikely for the foreseeable future. Thus, China's economic woes might intensify. Professor Frank Xie from the School of Business at the University of South Carolina bluntly states, the Chinese economic crisis has already begun. On August 20th, Professor Xie stated to the media, all Chinese companies and foreign enterprises were caught off guard by the CCP's zero-COVID policy, leading to an abrupt halt in production. Foreign businesses see the CCP's heavy political intervention in the economy as too risky. Companies from various countries are relocating their supply chains elsewhere, effectively decoupling from China. China faces inflation, rising commodity prices, and increasing labor costs. The CCP exhibits hostility towards private enterprises. Its aim to establish CCP branches within companies to exert control has also driven businesses away. Professor Xie pointed out that the China-US trade war has expedited this shift in supply chains. Manufacturing industries have laid off employees, gone bankrupt, or relocated, leading to increased unemployment and reduced overall income. The real estate bubble is finally untenable. This bubble has been supported by the CCP's lenient loan policies and Wall Street investments over the past decade. Property prices are set to crash, with sales forecasted to plunge by 70 to 80%. Homes are not selling, and the CCP is not allowing price reductions. Ordinary citizens are now realizing that these houses are overvalued. Some even owe more on their mortgages than their homes are currently worth, making them more reluctant to spend. This has led to a downturn in retail and commerce, signaling the onset of an economic crisis. Currently, China's ongoing economic crisis remains a major topic of discussion in global media. On August 20th, the Wall Street Journal published an article titled, China's 40-year boom is over. What comes next? The article points out that signs of economic distress are evident, and the growth model China has relied on for 40 years has shattered. China is entering a challenging period. According to Adam Tooze, a historian at Columbia University who specializes in economic crises, quote, "We're witnessing a gear shift in what has been the most dramatic trajectory in economic history." Nobel laureate in economic studies Paul Krugman recently wrote in the New York Times that China is repeating the mistakes of the 2008 financial crisis, pointing to the ever-expanding real estate market unchecked by third-party payments and massive debt incurred by local governments. A commentary published in the German newspaper Handelsblatt on August 20th expressed concerns about China's economic situation, emphasizing the uncertainty as no one truly knows the extent of the current crisis. This is partly because the Chinese official statistical data is untrustworthy, which exacerbates the anxiety in the financial markets. The article stated that it's clear that the days when Beijing could arbitrarily control the economy are over. The era where China could alleviate the world's economic downturns through massive economic stimulus is history. China is now a global economic risk factor. The Chinese government's reliance on the real estate sector to boost the economy is backfiring. The sector now constitutes nearly a quarter of China's GDP and is undoubtedly a bubble. Its collapse will have a significant impact. On August 22nd, Taiwanese economist Wu Jialong remarked to the media that the international financial community has reached a new consensus on China's economy, summarized in 4 points. Firstly, the so-called era of reform and opening up by the CCP has ended. Since Xi Jinping took office, there's been a phenomenon of state enterprises advance, private sectors retreat, discouraging dependence on the market economy and promoting reliance on the government and party. Therefore, the era of reform and opening up is over. Secondly, the era of China as the world's factory has ended. Now the West is decoupling from the Chinese government, moving manufacturing out of China. Thirdly, the period of China's high growth has concluded. Previously, as China embraced globalization and became the world's factory, numerous manufacturing activities shifted to China. With a halt in reform and opening up, this era has ended. Lastly, the age of China's rise as a major power has also finished. Wu Jialong said Xi Jinping has always pursued the rise of a great nation, believing that the U.S. is declining, believing in a shift from west to east in the global balance of power. This perception is mistaken, resulting in the U.S. directly besieging China. Wu summed up, China now sees the end of 4 eras: reform and opening up, the world's factory, high growth, and the rise of a great power. Discussions have been rife regarding how many years China's economy might regress should it collapse. Some opinions suggest a setback to the pre-2001 era, before China joined the WTO. However, Wu is more pessimistic, believing that China's economy might revert to the period before its reform and opening up around 1978. An economic crisis could lead to widespread public grievances. Under such circumstances, Xi Jinping's administration might resort to strict measures to control social unrest, potentially endangering his rule. This could compel him to take drastic actions, such as initiating a war against Taiwan. An unpredictable outcome might be the complete collapse of the CCP regime and all ensuing events. This isn't just a problem for China, it concerns the entire world.